Welcome to Lunch Bites. We're here to talk about innovative growth ideas in Mexico with three talented businessmen who have found success in a very diverse range of businesses. Truly we couldn't have a more different group of panelists here for this particular forum, but what everyone seems to have in common is they chose Mexico, right? They chose Mexico. We live in a global economy, and your exposure is here. Starting with Simón Galante. He is CEO of Fibra Hotel, which IPO'd on the Mexican Stock Exchange in November, and is part of this big wave of so-called Fibras, which are Mexico's REITs. Next to him we have Sosa, who is CEO of Rev Worldwide, a global payments company focused on payment solutions. And he can talk to us also about his venture activity here. And finally, right next to me, we have Richard Whittall, who is president and CEO of Newstrike Capital, which is exploring for gold in Guerrero. So I wanted to start off by asking you each the following. Why are you in Mexico? Richard, let's start with you.
Well, we've been here for 18 years, and our main focus is gold exploration. And the reason we're in Mexico is because we've discovered a huge gold belt 4 hours from this great city. And it's a great mining jurisdiction. It has a huge history in mining. And we find it a very stable environment to do business. And
in terms of barriers to entry, profitability, Mexico was the right place to go?
Yeah, it's obviously changed over the years, but we have found in the last, call it 10 years, it's been a remarkably easy place to do business. It's very clear, the jurisprudence is very clear, and there really hasn't been a barrier to entry. The capital that we've raised in Canada, which is really global capital, from Sweden, from Switzerland, the UK, that has come in through Canada to back us, and we've invested all that money in Guerrero.
Roy, tell us a little bit about your story. Why are you here? What's the opportunity in Mexico vis-a-vis your business?
Well, I wish I could tell you that, hey, major publications around the world for the last 3 months have really pointed to what we heard all day today, which is enormous opportunities, economic advantage for Mexico, demographic dividend. But really for me, it's much simpler. I was born here, and for generations, I mean, this is kind of where we belong. I had an interesting story because when the Mexican demographic dividend started, I was part of those Mexicans that, instead of really adding to the labor in the country, ended up emigrating to the US. And when I think about the fact that we ended up creating our first venture, started with $1,000, IPO'd at over $1 billion, and then sold that company at $1.4 billion, I think to myself, there's got to be at least 1,000 such stories that could have happened in Mexico. Yeah. Had the conditions been what they're getting to be right now. And so for me, it's a very exciting time, because I think as an entrepreneur that really got a chance to understand that entrepreneurship does not equal just financing, but it's an entire ecosystem, to have the ability to come back to my homeland and really invest not only capital, but also network. So it's your network and your net worth to really potentiate a country that is so young, is so committed, and again, it's living through an amazing period, and why not?
Yeah, so maybe some opportunities for growth sustained by ground-up entrepreneurship.
Absolutely, it's an entire ecosystem. So we looked at it, the framework at the beginning. You got to get the regulations right, because regulations that are amorphous or incomplete equal uncertainty. But an entrepreneur just needs to know what the lay of the land is. You don't necessarily need favorable regulations, just have it be predictable and consistent. Energy, all of a sudden you can look at everything that's happening in the US in terms of renewable energy, alternative energy. That can absolutely happen here. Number two, financial inclusion. You have a country with 60% of the country's population outside of the banking system, huge opportunity. Education, there's an incredible movement across the US, both in Boston and Silicon Valley for EdTech. Yep. And we see that also as a massive opportunity. But again, whether you're talking about the $50,000, $100,000 investments all the way up to $5, $10 million, for us it's fascinating. We're looking to invest of our third fund at least $50 million in Mexico in the next 3 years, and we're hoping to catalyze from our friends, more established funds from Silicon Valley and also in Boston, another $500 million. It's not a lot when you're talking about a country like Mexico in terms of population and the size of the economy, but it's really exciting when you think about it that today, that angel investment ecosystem, that Series A venture capital, is still in a very infant stage. And so you combine everything that's going on, so the Samsungs, the GMs, the Bombardiers, the Airbuses of the world, the mining, that's going to happen and everybody gets that, but is this what if? So I'm looking forward to the next, the Marco Zuckerberg, Marco Lopez that will be creating, and the 50 others that will change Mexico in a radical way that we're not predicting today.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And Simon, tell us a little bit about how you're tapping into all of this, because for every Bombardier and for every venture capitalist that comes to Mexico, they need a place to stay, right?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for inviting me to this talk. And I would like to say a story as exciting as Roy, but I was born in Mexico and I live in Mexico. So my options were a little bit different than you, and I think that's exciting because my take and what I have seen in the last years as Mexico has changed is that the opportunities for these kind of people that want to invest and want to be entrepreneurs and want to take a chance in Mexico, they are so different today than they were 5, 7 years ago. And if you say 20 years ago, they were totally different as well. So I am very excited, and obviously in my market and what I know about it is real estate, and real estate has changed dramatically. If you say that 16 or 17 years ago, when we did a project, there wasn't any financing available. I can say that because I didn't see it in a book, I lived it. I tried to get financing for a real estate project 17 years ago, and there wasn't any available. So imagine the changes that's going on. As Jonathan said, now all these Fibras and all these ECADES are coming in, and maybe $8 or $10 billion have been invested in real estate in the last 30 months. And maybe that didn't happen for 7 years back then. So the opportunities are very exciting, and being a Mexican and living in Mexico and all my life living in Mexico, the environment and the ecosystem, as you said, it's totally different. It feels different. You go everywhere and you feel it differently, and that's very exciting for what's going to happen, not only now, but in the years going ahead.
Roy, how do we get more investors involved in the Mexico story? Simon was just talking about this new asset class that people are looking at nowadays, the Fibra. How do you get more people involved in financing some of the great ideas that are out there?
It really starts with dispelling some of the erroneous preconceptions of where we are. So I had some friends who, I won't name the actual fund, but a very prominent fund, Silicon Valley. It's like security is still an issue for them. Mm-hmm. And to me, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you set up offices in China or in India when you literally can have an amazing economy, an incredible trading partner,
Absolutely.
A few hours away, literally 3 hours from Silicon Valley? So we got to change that perception, because things are not what people read in the papers in America. They're very different. That's number one. Number two, we also have to change the dynamics of the entrepreneurs, and we got to figure out how do we connect. So we got to build the ecosystems. An entrepreneur such as Simon should not need to fly to Silicon Valley and compete with Silicon Valley ideas when there's nobody better than Simon to operate, run a business in Mexico. We also need more true entrepreneurs versus executives. We, over decades, have created a culture where we have the owner class that is very entrepreneurial, but they're not the CEOs. There's professional management that are the CEOs, and they operate it as if it was part of a big transnational organization. We need to move fast. We need to leverage the 20 to 35-year-old demographic, and we need to give them the chance. We need to invest in them. And so how do we get that? People in North America, in Western Europe, get that type of entrepreneur. We need to bring them in here, whether it's directly by creating alliances with local investors, or we actually do it through a sourcing and syndication of investments. But ultimately, it's going to be the big investors, the guys that today have a major stake in the game in Mexico, to really open it up. And I think some of the changes that we're seeing in energy and telecom are creating that, where you see some of these major families reaching out to the outside and saying, hey, the landscape is going to be more diverse, and we would like for you guys to come in here. And so I think you're going to start seeing a lot of those changes really being implemented very fast. I'm not talking years, I would say in a matter of months.
Fantastic. Richard, what do you think about this this point that Roy just made, that there are ingrained perceptions among investors about why or why not they might want to put their money here?
Well, I think it starts with the opportunity, and it's in our case, our capital comes from around the world, and they're backing Mexican assets and entrepreneurship. All our employees are Mexican. And over the years, in the mining business, it takes time to establish it. You also have to make a discovery. You have to find gold, in our case. But the world wants to invest in Mexico. And it goes to something you said earlier, which is the policies have to be friendly. They have to be, everything has to be stable. The markets hate uncertainty. And we're in a commodity business. So you have to tie it in. You need an anchor. But the assets and the opportunities are huge in Mexico. We have explored 0.5% of our properties, and I think this will be a generational belt in Guerrero. But the world wants to invest, and we're proof. We're living proof, and I think these two gentlemen